Imagine a bird that couldn't fly, had no natural predators, and lived in peace on a remote island. Sounds like paradise, right? Now imagine that bird going extinct just a few decades after humans discovered it. That's the story of the dodo, one of the most famous symbols of extinction. But how did a bird that once thrived so quickly disappear? And what lessons can we learn from its tragic fate? Let's dive into the story of the dodo and uncover the truth behind its mysterious extinction. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the history of one of the most iconic creatures to ever walk the earth, the dodo bird. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, dead as a dodo, or seen cartoons poking fun at this clumsy, flightless bird. But the real story of the dodo is far more tragic and complex than most people realize. In fact, the dodo's extinction was one of the earliest human-caused extinctions that should have been a huge wake-up call for us. The dodo bird, scientifically known as Rhapis cucullatus, was native to the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Mauritius is located about 700 miles east of Madagascar, and the dodo had lived there in isolation for thousands of years. Imagine an island paradise. No predators, an abundance of food, and a warm tropical climate. The dodo had it made. With no natural enemies, the dodo evolved into a flightless bird. It was roughly 3 feet tall and weighed about 20 to 40 pounds. People often picture the dodo as a plump, awkward-looking bird with a large beak, and while that's partly true, they weren't as clumsy as we've been led to believe. They were perfectly adapted to their environment. But then, in the late 1500s, humans arrived at in 1598. Dutch sailors first arrived on the shores of Mauritius. They had been exploring new trade routes and stumbled upon this untouched island. For the dodo, this was a turning point, the beginning of the end, really. You see, the dodo had never seen humans before. They had no reason to fear them. So when these strange visitors landed, the dodos didn't run away. In fact, they were so unafraid that sailors could walk right up to them and capture them without any resistance. The dodo's lack of fear became their greatest weakness. Now, the sailors didn't immediately wipe out the dodo population, but they certainly didn't help. They hunted the birds for food, and though the meat was reportedly tough and not very tasty, they were an easy meal. But humans weren't the only problem. When the Dutch sailors settled on Mauritius, they brought with them a host of animals: pigs, rats, dogs, and monkeys, among others. These invasive species wreaked havoc on the delicate ecosystem of the island. Pigs and rats, in particular, were a disaster for the dodos. The dodo laid its eggs on the ground because, well, it didn't need to worry about predators before. But now, with rats and pigs roaming the island, these eggs became easy targets. Before long, dodo eggs were being eaten faster than the birds could lay them. The introduction of these animals, along with the destruction of the dodo's habitat due to human settlement, sealed their fate. Within just a few decades, the dodo population began to dwindle rapidly. The final days of the dodo. By the mid-1600s, sightings of dodos had become increasingly rare. The exact date of the dodo's extinction isn't known, but it's widely believed that the last dodo died sometime in the late 1600s, less than 100 years after humans first arrived in Mauritius. Think about that for a second. An entire species wiped out in less than a century. It's both shocking and heartbreaking. What's even more tragic is that the dodo was such a unique creature, perfectly suited for the environment it lived in. It had no natural predators, no reason to be afraid of anything, and yet it was utterly defenseless against the changes humans brought. The last known sighting of a dodo was in 1662, and after that, the bird became nothing more than a legend, until scientists began to piece together its story many years later. The dodo in popular culture. It wasn't until the 19th century that the dodo's story started gaining widespread attention. Fossils were found, and scientists began to study them, trying to understand more about this strange bird that had vanished so suddenly. In popular culture, the dodo has become a symbol of extinction, often used to highlight how easily species can be wiped out. But the image of the dodo as a stupid or doomed creature isn't really fair. The dodo wasn't foolish, it was simply unprepared for the rapid changes humans brought to its world. In fact, The dodo's extinction was one of the earliest examples of how human activity can have devastating impacts on ecosystems. It should have been a warning to us about the dangers of overhunting and introducing invasive species. Unfortunately, it was a lesson we didn't fully learn at the time. So, what can we take away from the story of the dodo? It's a reminder that nature is delicate, and our actions have real, lasting impacts. The dodo didn't go extinct because it was weak or foolish. It went extinct because humans, knowingly or not, disrupted its environment in ways it couldn't survive. As we look to the future, it's up to us to make sure that the animals we share this planet with don't meet the same fate. Whether it's through protecting endangered species, reducing our ecological footprint, or supporting conservation efforts, we all have a role to play in preventing the next dodo. Thanks for watching, and if you found the story of the dodo interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Let's make sure we don't forget the lessons the dodo has taught us. Until next time, take care and stay curious.